Netanyahu has testified before Congress and urged us to go overthrow the government in Iran. This is their goal. They know that they don't have nuclear weapons. Hey guys, do you think he got it wrong when he said that for the last 30 plus years, or was he lying?
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. Today we're going to be watching Dave Smith take on Robert Spencer over whether or not the United States should go to war with Iran. This is a zero hedge debate, and Dave Smith absolutely cooks in this one. He has been on the debate warpath recently. Heaps of interesting points in this one, and I'm going to add plenty of context. So with that, let's get into it.
So that's 79 unanswered attacks from a power that is chanting death to America, saying it's a policy, not just a slogan. And that projects weakness. If you just let that keep happening and never respond, then you are exactly the same thing that Dave is saying is going to happen, but not in the way he envisions. You're going to lose the United States.
Dave Smith, your answer to Iran deserves it.
We're gonna lose the United States. You're telling me that militarily Iran is going to take out the United States of America? The idea is so preposterous. This is a country that does not have an air force capable of delivering weapons to us. We're the most powerful country in the history of the world, and this is a puny third world country. Although, compared to the other puny third world countries we've been picking on, they're much, much tougher. But just think about this, man. Everybody, the war fever and the drums are beating. Let calmer heads prevail for a second. I just told you that after 9/11, the war-hungry George W. Bush put Iran on the list of axis of evil and then invaded and destroyed their two next-door neighboring countries. And your response was, the kids yell some chants? Therefore, they're threatening us. I mean, let's get real here, guys.
Well, I want to talk about that threat real quick, Dave Smith, because we saw the House chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee say in an interview recently that however we confront Iran today, it is at least confronting an Iran without a nuclear weapon. And as messy and as bad as all those rough outcomes you described, the argument just that I'm presenting to you is, well, we eventually have to confront Iran, so better to do it now than later. Your response, and then we'll go to Mr. Spencer.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. And like I said, all of the intelligence indicates that they're not trying to get a nuclear weapon anyway. So this is all like it's all just begging the question. It's like you have to like demonstrate that they are actually attempting to get a nuclear weapon before you can just make that call. But you know, as the great Scott Horton said the other day, Truman did not start a war with the Soviets because they were developing a nuke, and Johnson didn't start a war with the Chinese communists because they were developing a nuke. And this idea that therefore it's okay to just launch a war of aggression because somebody else is developing a nuke. And the wildest thing about it, Matt, as you know, as everybody listening, I imagine knows, there is one country in the Middle East who has secretly developed nuclear weapons and is not a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and that's Israel. I mean, the nerve of them to launch a war on these grounds. Iran is in the Non-Proliferation Treaty and is not developing nuclear weapons and doesn't have nuclear weapons. Israel does, and lies to the world about it. And this is their justification for launching a war that they want to drag America into? I mean, wake up, people.
Robert, is it hypocritical for Israel to try to draw America into a war over a secret nuclear weapons program when Israel has a secret nuclear weapons program?
No, it certainly isn't. But we got to cover some other issues here.
Wait, it isn't even a little bit hypocritical? I mean, unsurprisingly, he pivoted very quickly there because this is just such an L for his position. And we're definitely not 100% sure that Iran is not trying to produce nukes. People who are saying that are, in my perspective, a little bit naive. I mean, if you just put yourself in their shoes for a second and you look at it strategically, if you do think that there is a chance that in the next few years or even sooner, you're going to be at war with nuclear powers, countries that do have nukes, such as America and Israel, then I think strategically you'd be wanting to get some yourself. But as far as we know, there is no solid proof. We know that they have been enriching their uranium. But we also know that Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying the exact same thing for decades, and he has been lying about it. And also, Israel does have nukes, and they lie about that. So if covertly developing nuclear weapons is a justification to go to war with a country, and that's Israel's justification for dragging the US into war with Iran, then that would make them hypocrites indeed. Now on to the next part where they talk about Iran becoming a constitutional republic if the Ayatollah is overthrown.
What do you think the odds are of a constitutional republic emerging in Iran? Do you think they're better than 50%? Robert?
Well, sorry, what was that?
Yeah, and I'll go to Dave with the same question. We're going to ask this question. What do you think the percentage chance is that a constitutional republic emerges out of regime change in Iran? Give a number percentage to that, Robert.
Probably 30 or 40, because...
Well, I want Dave's response too. You laid out the argument. Dave
Look,
Smith?
We've got just the opposite situation from Saddam Hussein and the toppling of Saddam, because Saddam was already a secular ruler. And there were a lot of people who thought he is not legitimate because he doesn't rule by Islamic law. And when he was toppled, then they saw their chance and they established ISIS and implemented Islamic law in the Sunni regions. And in Iran, it's just the opposite. Did you know that there was a survey a couple years ago of the Iranian people who were supposed to be 99% Muslim?
Yeah, okay, we're going to hold on. We're going to get to where the Iranian people are in a moment.
Guys, just a quick reminder, don't forget to smash that like button if you're enjoying the content. And also, in order to help me out with these algorithms, which have been not really loving my messaging recently for some reason, it's very important that we get lots of interaction in the comments. So if you guys don't mind telling me anything you want at all about your thoughts about the video, about the discussion, about my haircut, anything you want at all, leave it in the comments and I will be reading. With that, let's get back to the video.
But before we get to the Iranian people, I want to get to this notion of what the government looks like. You've presented this concept that there is a crown prince ready to come in and rule the country, and you say 30-40% that would go well. Dave Smith, I'm guessing you don't agree.
Yeah, I mean, look, let me just say, I just want to respond to a couple of things there, and then I will answer that, whatever percentage I would give it. First of all, again, just going to this, like, the idea that you're even going to say the chants or the rhetoric. I mean, how many American politicians have said, like, the craziest things, including John McCain and Hillary Clinton talking about wiping Iran off the face of the map herself, right? I forget her exact words, but it was something like that. John McCain constantly saying it. Donald Trump in tweets and in all types of bravado talk has made all types of comments about violence like you've never seen before. But nobody takes that as a serious policy. Like, we really just, you know what I'm saying? Like, nobody takes that as a serious policy until the other night when he tweeted for everyone to evacuate Tehran. Now, that's like a real type threat. But for us to even be talking about, like, they holler this or they chant that is just completely beside the point. Again, this is weapons of mass destruction all over again. All the intelligence says they don't have a bomb. That our own CIA said that since 2007, they've made the political decision not to acquire a bomb. We just got that reaffirmed with more intelligence last week. There was another report that said the same thing. So that's number one. After this, look, I'll concede this. I don't know, by the way, exactly what the percentage would be. My gut instinct is it's much, much lower than that. And I do find it to be such an unbelievable insult. I just can't even believe we're having this debate, that we start the terror war to get Al-Qaeda, and then it turns into spread democracy. And at this point in it, Matt, 25 years later, you understand, we got to support the Al-Qaeda guy who just took over Syria, and now we got to spread monarchy to Iran. It's just such an insult to the intelligence of the American people. But I will say this, I'll grant you, I'll maybe meet you in the middle here, and I think maybe we could have some agreement on this area. I will grant you that perhaps it is true what you're saying, and some of the other hawks say as well, that Iran is a better candidate for regime change. Perhaps the odds are a little higher that it would work out than it would in Iraq. I'd probably put the odds at, like, say 1% in Iraq and like 5% here, but whatever, let's say the odds are higher. The flip side to that is that Iran is also tougher. This is a country 3 times the size of Iraq. This is a government who has maintained power and much more tight control over their country. They're a bigger economy. They have a much more sophisticated military. They have an ability. Look, even what we've just seen in Israel already. See, we're used to picking on real puny third world countries, so we're not used to this. But they just hit Israel back and killed some people there. Now, I don't know how much they have in the tank, but they certainly at least have a little bit more than this, and they can touch perhaps us or Israel. And then the other thing is the terrain there is much harder to fight on. And then the other thing is that if your percentage doesn't work out and one of these maniacs seizes control of the government, and it's a much worse situation than that, you got to consider the potential that we're getting dragged into something catastrophic here that's going to cost another $2 trillion and get another 500,000 people killed. And so, I don't know, do you guys, after the last 25 years, not have any sense of concern about this, of taking this risk? risk
Well, let
right
me.
now?
Okay, so you can kind of understand the point that Iran would maybe be more likely to fall into some sort of a democracy in some sort of a hypothetical situation, because pre-Ayatollah, pre-1979, they were a little bit more liberal, and their ethnic makeup is a little bit differently. They're Persians, not Arabs. But the big problem I see there is that they're bordered with, or at least very near to, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, who are all run by Islamic radicals. So the odds of a Muslim country emerging in that region as some sort of a liberal democracy, in my estimation, is just slim to none. On to the next part now, where Dave absolutely cooks.
Dave, I want to push back on this because I've heard this argument as well. Well, us striking Iran doesn't really bring us to that level of entanglement and involvement that mirrors Iraq or Afghanistan or even Libya. This can be more akin to the Soleimani strike. A lot of the people I like and listen to, like Rand Paul, were critical of the Soleimani strike, but it didn't drag us into extended conflict with Iran. It reset deterrence and everyone rolled on their way for a few years. Do you think, Dave Smith, that there's any validity to the argument that this can be a kind of one and done, go strike some nuclear facilities, fly home, and then hope that it doesn't go beyond that?
Well, I certainly hope so. And I certainly hope Donald Trump, President Trump, comes to his senses and you know what I mean, pulls back from this. I think that hopefully at this point he still could do that. I don't see any signal that that is the case. And I think that we should be honest with ourselves and make no mistake about this, that this is a regime change war already, and that has been Israel's goal here the entire time. They've admitted it in their own words over and over and over again. Netanyahu has testified before Congress and urged us to go overthrow the government in Iran. This is their goal. They know that they don't have nuclear weapons. This is all the culmination of the clean break strategy. General Wesley Clark told us there were 7 countries they wanted to take out, and this is the 7th one. They're going in to take this country out. Like, I don't know how anybody can even argue with this at this point. And so that's why the argument here is, what are we getting ourselves into, and how risky is another regime change war for a country that poses absolutely no threat to us? This is a country that again, there is no need for us to do this. This is a complete and obvious war of aggression by Israel with American assistance, and a war of choice. We simply don't have to. Look, Benjamin Netanyahu has been telling me since I was 7 years old that Iran is 1 to 3 years away. Hey guys, do you think he got it wrong when he said that for the last 30 plus years? Or was he lying? Or was he lying so that America would go overthrow the government he wants overthrown?
So it's really hard to argue with Dave's logic at this point. So the Clean Break memo refers to a 1996 policy document titled A Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm, written by a group of American neocons for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It advocated for a complete shift in Israeli foreign and defense policy, moving away from the Oslo Accords, which was designed to create some sort of a pathway to a two-state solution, and adopting a more aggressive, self-reliant regional posture. Authors included Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, David Wormser, and the idea was that they were going to throw 7 countries that were adversarial to Israel. Those countries being Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. Iraq obviously was invaded by the US under the justification of weapons of mass destruction and regime change, removing Saddam Hussein from power, and he was eventually killed. Libya, NATO, led by the US, conducted airstrikes in support of rebels during the Libyan civil war, and Gaddafi was overthrown and killed pretty brutally. And in Syria, I mean, just recently we saw Assad have to leave the country after years and years of civil war. And in Lebanon, there's no outright invasion, but there's been plenty of proxy conflicts and the Israel's 2006 war with Hezbollah, and they are in a state of economic disaster. And Sudan and Somalia, I mean, the US has conducted airstrikes and sanctions, all different kinds of things on them as well, and they're not in such a good state either. And so the last one on the list, the last remaining piece on the chessboard, is Iran. So with all of that context in mind, it paints a picture that obviously the reason for this war is because it is in the Israelis' interests to try and achieve regime change. And to be honest with you, anything else at this stage kind of just feels like gaslighting. And now let's watch the part where they play a little bit of this history and see the responses.
I think we have some of that. I'd like to get Robert's response to some of those claims by the current prime minister who had been in and out of Israel's government for quite some time. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly. if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
At JM Bullion, excellent service and competitive pricing aren't just goals, they're our standard. Our commitment to customer discretion and privacy with secure and confidential transactions has earned us an unparalleled reputation as an online retailer of precious metals, backed by over 375,000 reviews, averaging 4.8 out of 5 stars. Only at JM Bullion.
You're joining us in the Zero Hedge debates. We're here with Robert Spencer, director of Jihad Watch, and Dave Smith, host of Part of the Problem. So the question to you, Robert, does the Prime Minister have any credibility?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the fact is that it's not just either he's right and obviously he was wrong, or he's lying. There's a third choice. And the third choice revolves around the fact that there have been numerous strange, mysterious accidents that befell Iranian nuclear scientists, computer foul-ups in Iranian nuclear facilities. A lot of this has been blamed on Mossad. Mossad, of course, has not taken any explicit credit for it, but it is altogether possible that the Iranian nuclear adventure has been stymied at several points by the Israelis, and that is why the
Why not just keep doing that? Instead of a regime change war, why don't we just keep doing those things? Those sound great.
That would be great. If that it can be handled that way, then I'm all for it.
I don't understand.
Straw men, because I'm not talking about boots on
Straw
the
men.
ground. Some
Dude,
sort
this
of
is.
yeah, it's a straw man to say.
Okay, this is
we
the
have
most
to send
dishonest.
American
This
troops to Iran, because that is not what I'm arguing, and that is not. There is no reason.
Yes, no, I'm not. I'm
Wait,
not
wait,
saying.
hold on,
I
Dave,
understand.
hold on, Dave.
No,
Sorry.
necessary at this point.
Yeah, I want to
also-
clarify your argument, Robert. You're saying that you're not advocating the position that we ought to deploy troops to the streets of Tehran today, but are you sensitive to the argument that our involvement in Syria, where a lot of Americans were mangled, killed, that began with 40 military advisors? Do you worry about America's history of slow walking or sleepwalking into some of these wars?
Yeah, except for one thing, and that is that Trump is aware of this. Trump, for all the rhetoric that's been going on the last few days, is not George W. Bush. Lessons have been learned from Iraq and Afghanistan. Remember his devastating exchange with Jeb Bush back in 2015, I guess it was. And the fact is that Trump has been consistent all through these years of saying he's not going to allow Iran to get nukes, while at the same time rightly excoriating the Bush administration and Obama as well for engaging in this pointless and fruitless mission creep and nation building. And so why is it impossible to believe that he intends to take out Iran's nuclear program, or is willing to do so if it comes to that? But that does not mean that he's going to go in with some Bushian adventure and try to give democracy to the Iranians.
Well, Robert, how do we stop Israel from a decapitation campaign if we're bombing nuclear facilities? What's the leverage we have over them at that point?
Well, okay, if Israel undertakes a decapitation campaign, you've also got to reckon with the possibility that the Iranian people might undertake a decapitation campaign. You know that it was several years ago now, as a matter of fact, a full soccer stadium, it's like 50, 70,000 people in Iran was chanting, "Long live Reza Shah," who was the father of the deposed Shah of Iran. He was the Shah in the 1930s. And that kind of open defiance of the Islamic regime and disgust with the Islamic regime also combined with the fact that, as I was trying to say before, that so many Iranians, where it's officially 90% Shiite Muslim and 95 to 99% Muslim in general, and actually only 40% of Iranians now identify as Muslims, is an indication of the deep disgust that the Iranian people themselves have for this regime. There was nothing like that in Iraq or Afghanistan. And both of those were wrong-headed and stupid from the beginning. This is a very different situation with a very different president. And the idea that he's just going to blunder into making all the same mistakes that George W. Bush, who he knows was a fool and has said was a fool, made, there's just no reason to assume that.
I certainly hope so. There is the argument that we've heard in other campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq that we would be greeted as liberators. And it seems Robert's making that argument now. Dave Smith, do you see any challenges with that?
Well, let me just, I got to respond to a bunch of this stuff, but yeah, of course, there's a million challenges with that. But number one, I wasn't strawmanning your position. I didn't claim that your position is to send boots on the ground. That's what a straw man would be. What I said is that your position has an unacceptable risk of being dragged into a situation where we have boots on the ground. So it's not a straw man of your issue, but I just can't believe, like, the hardest pivot I ever saw in my life from you watching that video of Netanyahu to basically saying a couple scientists dropped dead, and so I could imagine a world where they would have had nuclear weapons. He said with certainty, they're 6 months away from being at 90%, just bold-faced lies. And then, by the way, I mean, just Matt, as basic human beings watching this here, you're telling me that by the 19th time you've gotten it wrong, you don't go, now granted, I have been wrong about this 18 times in a row, but no, with certainty, he says they're 6 months away. And every honest human being knows he was lying to try to lure America into a regime change that he wanted. And why on earth should we do it? On behalf of it, it's just so crazy. I just couldn't believe that you completely got away from that. It's like right there in front of you. The lies are being told. It's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, bold-faced lies. And how many times have we seen this? And that's why these days people are so much more hesitant about taking any sort of narratives about intelligence services finding out this and that about a country, about weapons of mass destruction or nukes, or plans to kill your leaders, and for that reason we have to go and overthrow them. And oh, by the way, we kind of planned this like 30 years ago, and all of the other countries that we said that we were going to overthrow or destabilize, we have done that, and this is the last one. But it's not because of that, it's because of this new thing that's popped up. Just don't really buy it anymore. So anyways, you can believe it if you want, and you can let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to smash that like button, guys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and if you'd like to watch another video, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.